So I'm going to go ahead now and get started. I'm going to drop the screen share for a second. All right, so the big focus of all this is I know that a lot of people are apprehensive with the possibilities of remote learning this fall. I'm assuming no one's done any remote learning this spring. I know some of you have, but I want to try to assume as little as possible to make this nice. I'm going to try to go over a few different things. I'm going to talk a good deal about Canvas, which is a free online learning resource. So this is a classroom management tool. I'll be talking a bit about Zoom and just making sure that you know kind of like the tips and tricks of Zoom if you're going to be doing any kind of live sessions for your students. I'll be talking about whiteboard. I'll be talking about whiteboard applications and kind of like different ways you could use whiteboards. And I'll also be showing what you could do if you don't have anything like an iPad and what you could do if you just have, for instance, a phone. Lastly, I'll be talking about just a few online resources that the American Institute of Mathematics has. These are just things like just online lesson plans, things that you can engage with your students entirely online. I see one question in chat, which is that Beth's internet's currently unstable. I don't think there's anything I could do as far as encouraging, as far as facilitating better internet speeds right this second. What I will say is that if you're having a hard time getting any of this, we will be recording this session, and then you'll be able to watch any things that might have kind of like phased out because of stream lag at your own leisure through a dedicated video. So I'm sorry if anyone's having unstable internet connections. I will be talking a little bit about that later, I think, as far as what options you have for your students. But the big spoiler to that is going to be that we're going to want to try to do more recording just for students who miss things due to either lag, latency, things like that will have options. Yeah, I'm also seeing from Stephanie, right now there's a lot of security concerns with Zoom in particular. It's very much case by case, and that's a lot outside of my immediate purview or immediate understanding. So I might try to talk a little bit about that during the Q&A and my thoughts there. But I want to clarify that I am not a specialist with regards to things like that. Okay. So if there's any kind of immediate questions, I'm happy to answer those for that last kind of minute or two before we wait for people to get in. Otherwise, I'm going to start this by talking a little bit about Canvas. My background, just for people that are interested, I currently work with the American Institute of Mathematics. I'm their Associate Director of Special Projects, particularly their K-12 projects. What that means is that I help out with a lot of different K-12 resources for either teachers such as yourself or for students of various need groups. Before that, I worked at the San Francisco State University, and I worked at the University of San Francisco. And at the University of San Francisco, my class met in session. It was not an online class, but it was entirely a paperless class where I did all of my education through Canvas. So by popular request, I was told that Canvas was the thing that we should talk about the most. Unfortunately, Canvas I have the most experience with. So I'm going to be showing through kind of like an example of how I use Canvas and how I would suggest using Canvas for your fall semester. Again, Canvas, as I understand it, is currently free for all teachers. You could sign up for a free account, and you could use this as a classroom management tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I am going to switch over. Oh, actually, I'm really fast going to call Bob Klein up to the stage. Yes. So, Bob, you should be able to turn your video on right now.
I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep, everyone can hear you now.
So I just wanted to, on behalf of the Alliance of Indigenous Math Circles, and in advance of his presentation, thank Spencer for putting this together. And I'm thrilled at the turnout, 44 people, that's amazing. Really what we put this together for is based on the feedback from teachers who have participated with us before in Alliance Math Circles. The feedback we were getting was that this was an immediate need and something that people wanted to have some more information on. So Spencer and the American Institute of Mathematics have been great partners for us, and we're really excited to have him share some resources and then have some Q&A time at the end. And of course, we remind you that the directors and members of the Alliance of Indigenous Math Circles are also here to support you, and glad that you could join us today. We're These are tough times, but we're grateful to be standing alongside you, and grateful for your time too. So with that in mind, I just wanted to let you know that you were loved, Spencer. So take it away, buddy.
Thanks a lot for that, Bob. Great. So then I think I'm going to go ahead now and start talking about this on Canvas. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I will open up a Canvas tab. So let me go ahead and do this. All right, so you should be able to see this screen right now. When you're looking at this, I would really suggest that you go ahead and on the top right corner of the screen, you're going to want to click on this to expand and make that occupy your entire view window. Unless you want to use things like the chat or stuff like this, it'll probably be a little bit easier. If you're having any hard time seeing this kind of feed, let me know in chat and I'll see if I can do anything to fix it. I tried testing it, it looked nice. I'm just worried that when we do this live, it might have some problems. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up my Canvas dashboard. And it should look something like this. This is actually my buddy's account. I haven't taught at USF for a while, so I had to use his. But if you have multiple classes going on, you can go ahead and you can create a course for each class. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of the older classes just to make sure that I'm not messing with anything that would possibly notify students. I don't want them to think that I'm suddenly creating an assignment midway through the summer and they're totally worried that their grades are getting changed. But this is kind of what the homepage looks like for each of your classes. You can go ahead and do a lot of customization. Kind of like, the basic stuff is like, this is really meant for posting your syllabus and things like that. So in the top, you see just really basic kind of things. I have, my syllabus. I have my syllabus available as a PDF. And to do this kind of stuff, you can go ahead, you can go to your edit. Everything here, you can kind of include as text that we're editing. The big thing that I like using with a lot of this is just embedding useful files. So you can see here that I have a link right here, which I'm able to include by going ahead and using to either link to URL, which I could use this to upload files if I'm doing something through Google Docs, if any of you are more comfortable with that. But something that's a lot easier to just go ahead and use files. So here, this was already a course that I made, so I have a bunch of files. But when I'm going through, I'll want to go ahead and upload new file. And when I go into this option, I can go ahead and do things like a Microsoft Word document that I use to make my PowerPoint, things like that. I can go ahead and upload straight into Canvas this way. I'm going to kind of go through a lot of these features a little quickly, but if there's anything that you have questions on, please just, again, reminder that you can go into the Q&A. So this is just kind of like, your basic homepage. As far as making sure that all of your students are accessible for your Canvas, there's this People tab. Now, this is an old class that's kind of been closed, so I can't currently add anyone to that. But how this would work, let's say that you're wanting to get all of your students onto Canvas, or maybe this is something that a lot of schools already have Canvas kind of built in. If you're maybe doing this on your own, all you're going to need to do to add people is go to this tab right here that says People. If you click on it, you'll then get the option to add your students by URL. I would again suggest for all standards and practices that your student should have a school-issued URL. So they should have something under your domain. So for instance, my students were USFCA, so I would want to make sure that I use their USFCA email. If you're at a certain school district, just make sure that you're using that URL to add them to the class, and eventually you'll go ahead and get a roster that looks something like this. You can go ahead and see which sections they're in. For instance, I had students that were in the same class across multiple sections. So I would be able to see things like that. You could see their roles. For instance, I had a grader named Erin. I can go ahead and assign her a TA role if I wanted her to be responsible for grading things like that. Again, that's kind of like more of the university life. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of support for our K-12 educators. But you can go ahead and you can see more detail about the students by kind of clicking on them and things like that. You can check their grade. You can see their missing assignments, late assignments, things like that. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about assignments, and I'm going to eventually get to how I would incorporate something like this with more remote learning options like Zoom, things like that. So in Canvas, you can go ahead and create assignments. All of my assignments were done through Canvas. This was in the before times, back when we could actually see each other in person, but all of my stuff was done through Canvas. So how that works is you go to the Assignments tab, you go ahead here and you create an assignment, or you can create a group. This is a little bit nice because if you've ever had to worry about gradebooks in the past, Canvas has a built-in gradebook feature where you can go ahead and assign your different kind of things. So for instance, I had a homework group, I had a quizzes group, I had a participation group, and I had exams. And if you see right here, you can go ahead and see what kind of weighted percent you have. And you could build this all into the assignments feature itself. So for instance, if I go over here, I could edit this and I can say what percent of the total grade I want that assignment to be. Fun fact, if you don't make it add up to 100%, it'll upscale. So if I made everything add up to 60%, it would then just kind of extrapolate that to be a full 100%. But it's best practice to try to make sure everything adds up correctly. Whenever you do an assignment now, you can go ahead and add an assignment like this. So I just go +2 assignment. I could type in whatever I want. A few things that are nice about this is realistically, your students are going to be uploading their assignments. When you're using Canvas, you have submission type, online, on paper, no submission. So no submission being like they don't need to turn in anything. Online is most likely what you're going to be using. And I almost exclusively used file uploads. So I taught an Excel-based stats class, meaning that most of the documents I wanted my students to use were Excel documents. So if I use something called file uploads, they could upload whatever file they want. So they could go ahead and upload a Word document. They could upload a basic text document. They could upload, a PowerPoint, whatever they want. One thing that you're going to notice if this is your first time doing any kind of online classes, and this was the bane of my existence for the first, I think 2 years, was sometimes they'll upload files that you can't open and you'll never be able to open. I noticed this a lot as I was a Windows person and they were Mac people. Most of my students, they would upload a lot of Mac exclusive files that I was having a hard time opening. Similarly, there's a lot of random garbage files that people could accidentally upload. Essentially, they're kind of like little data exclusive files that shouldn't be a thing. And for some reason, people would upload by mistake. What I would do is I would restrict the file upload types. So let's say that I want my students to exclusively give me an Excel file. Then I could go ahead and type in, Excel file is XLS. So I would just do that. You could use commas and things like that to kind of add more types. But you just say, if I want a Word file, well, a Word file is doc. So I'm just going to type in doc. So then they'll only be able to upload a doc. So I'm going to show an example of what this looks like. So I'm going to pull up an assignment. Let's see. So let's pull up homework 3. So now when the students look at this, I have, kind of the full posting that I use, things like that. I want to make sure that things are published. So now this is, again, something that you'll see a lot in all of these online softwares, is there's a difference between draft states and publishing. When I was first starting out, I realized that I would put something up and I'd forget to hit publish. Things are really in your face about that now, though. So you can see, though, you want to make sure that it's set to published. And if you kind of look at the edit settings for what I have here, again, I could assign however many points I want it out of. I put it into whatever group. So this is a homework assignment, not to be confused with a quiz or an exam. And then I'm making sure they have to upload a file, and I choose what file type I want. There are a ton of other features. A lot of the stuff's things that are newer than what I was last using. So I'm not going to talk too much about those, but the basic things are, you want to give your students homework assignments. You could set whenever you want it to be due. You could say what type of file you want it to be and give any kind of descriptions, things like that. What's also nice about this is when they upload these things, you have a few options. Canvas is really smart about a lot of things. So for instance, I could go to something like SpeedGrader, and it'll go ahead, and even though these are Excel files, it's able to kind of take that Excel file and make it into a pretty plain, simple thing. So this student had a 20-page Excel document because I was rather malicious back when I was teaching, and I gave very long homework assignments, unfortunately. I've learned the error of my ways since then. But you can go ahead and you can see the entire thing via Canvas. So if you're wanting to have an easier time and not have to open up a million different things, assuming that it's either a doc, a PDF, or a basic Excel, Microsoft kind of file, you can go ahead and look at it all through Canvas. So I could go through here, I could grade, I could do any kind of commenting I want. For instance, you could say what your grade is. This actually has a comment that came from Christina Swift, who was one of my graders, and she was able to kind of like put the file back. So she actually downloaded the file entirely, made some changes to it, uploaded it back for the student, and then they went ahead and just were able to see that all there. So it kind of like has its own little comment threads through it. What's also nice is it also shows the submission grades, things like that, or the submission dates. Even though this was an in-person class, like I said, everything was done through Canvas, and I even did my exams through Canvas. One thing that was nice about this is I could actually see when students uploaded their exams. So I'm going to go back and kind of show what that looks like. So when I'm kind of like looking over at the exam tabs, right, I could see like exam 2. I have when it's due for everyone, and you can have availability options. So you could say that they could still turn it in after the due date. You could kind of do with that what you will, but you're able to say that I want my assignment due. Class ends at 3:30 p.m. You have until 3:30 p.m. to upload it, something to that effect. And then when I go into SpeedGrader, again, I could kind of see all that information nice and neat. And I go ahead, I do all my grading, things such as that. I'm going to talk about one last feature that I really think will be useful for online learning through Canvas. And then I'm going to kind of like take a slight break just to see if I'm going a bit too fast or if there's a few things I should clarify. And that's the announcements tab. When I was using Canvas for my class, announcements were my bread and butter for the course. And I think this will be the most useful thing when you're going ahead and making an announcement. Sorry, when you're making any of your classes, for instance. So for instance, practice final was an announcement that was made. You could go ahead and see that you could attach whatever notes you want. Here's like, for instance, a study guide. Here's the basic kind of announcement. But even like in my very first, again, this actually isn't my class, but they more or less did everything I did. So yes, yeah. So even when the class started, like having kind of like basic things talking about laptop policy. So we went ahead and said, you know, before class was even starting, it's like this course will need yada yada. We made sure to include that as an announcement. What I'm thinking you're going to want to use this for is if you plan on using Zoom or any kind of online program for in-person synchronous education, meaning like, you know, you're actually talking to your students, sorry, not in person, I apologize, not in person, synchronous education. So if you're wanting to talk to your students, I would suggest you use Zoom, and you use Zoom as, you know, links that you can then share as announcements on this page. So for instance, I would go ahead and make a Zoom, which I'll talk about in a second. You then embed it as an announcement and be like, all right, class, we're going to be meeting at 2 p.m. Here's the link. Here's the password. Go ahead, use this information to join the class. You make an announcement, you post it. Students know where to go. The big advice I would give is if you could corral as much of your education resources to a single place. So students just need to know, I'm going to Canvas. That's where I'm going to find my Zoom link. I use the Zoom link. I get to class. You could go ahead and put it in the announcements. As far as other Canvas features, there's a lot of really fancy stuff to be had. For instance, there are discussion boards, which I nor my friends here ever really used. You could use this to have kind of like general class discussions. I mean, there's a lot of different competitors out there as far as like getting students to kind of like have some sort of like social media within the classroom. I would say give this a shot. I didn't use it at the time because, you know, we were in a different age back then, but I would say discussion boards would probably be a good idea. Additionally, you could turn on the option to allow for comments for announcements. So if you wanted, students could be encouraged to be like, all right, so we're talking about class. If you have any problems making this class, go ahead and leave a comment, something to that effect. Should be fairly helpful. There's also something called modules, which I'm not going to get into too much. If your school is using Canvas officially, there's a decent chance that they've explored modules, which is where you can take whole swaths of your class and export them to someone else. So for instance, I would go ahead and make modules for my stats class and then pass them off to other teachers, and they would use those modules in their own learning. This is something that I obviously wouldn't get into if you're doing Canvas on your own, is like someone just trying to figure out how to take care of your class. But a lot of schools have spent time like figuring out like modules that they want to share across all their teachers. And I would just try to be aware of that if that's something your school is looking at. Okay. Additionally, I personally use this as a means of recording attendance. If you look at my assignments, I have this long page right here, which is called participation. This is just something I did, and this is a personal preference of mine. And if you like this option or not, go for it. But what I did was that I had everything was in Excel, and I wanted to make sure students were following along and going into Excel. So every class, I essentially created a homework assignment where they went ahead and made their own notes document. And then they uploaded that notes document to the participation. So you see, for instance, if I look at participation 9-8, you go ahead and I assign points to it. They just need to do a file upload. And then you see that, yeah, all of my students attended that day. They uploaded notes. This is something that I would maybe suggest if you're trying to get kind of like a feel for things and making sure that all of your students have some form of engagement after your lecture, just uploading something. But if you're worried more that your students are going to have a harder time with being able to make regular classes, that might not be feasible. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to check because I see 2 Q&A questions, and then I'm going to look at chat for a moment. Okay. A big benefit for Google Classroom or Canvas. I'm not too sure if I would say that there's a strict benefit from one or the other. I was originally going to start this session talking more about Google Classroom because I'm a fan of the Google ecosystem, but I do think Canvas has a lot of popularity, and that's something that I was already familiar with. I know that several educators here have already made reference to the fact that they will be using Canvas, so that's why I'm talking about it more specifically. But yes, they're very similar. I could show later in the talk a few cool things you could do with Google Docs, and things like that might be helpful. And that's something that you're really getting best with the Google Classroom setup. But honestly, I used a lot of Google Docs later in my teaching where I would just embed them into Canvas. And then let me check because I also saw something in chat. Yes. Oh, yeah. Canvas is free. Canvas is free. I could see if I could find a link to share with David to kind of like pass on to everyone else. But as I understand it, Canvas is free. Let's see. Let me take a second. I'm just looking through the chat really fast. Is there any way you could do full shareable screen and close your video screen? Oh, yeah. So at the event host, so on my full screen, you could actually click on the expandable arrows and it'll make it bigger. So if you look on my feed where you don't, the feed not my face, you can go ahead and expand that. Oh, somebody already answered that. Sorry. Yeah. So Bob kind of already answered that question too. Great. Let's see. There was a question about Zoom that I kind of want to get to. Oh, I know with Zoom you're limited only a few free minutes. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll make sure to double check. I did a really cursory glance, and what I saw was that Canvas was free. So I'm now getting slightly paranoid that maybe I overestimated its freeness, but I'll double check that and make sure to share any resources I see with Bob to pass along to everyone else. Cool. And no, unfortunately, I'm unfamiliar with Schoolology. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Districts can provide customized looks for Canvas accounts. For instance, again, I'm using, let's see. Let's see. So if you look over on my share screen, like this is USF's, they embedded Canvas within their school. It's something that a lot of school districts use. You can use it independently, yes. So that was the thing that I was looking at earlier, which is that you could use it independently, create a classroom, and share that way. Okay, let me just double check. Yeah. So let's see. We were told that they'll be using yeah, so let's see. Equations editor, which is stronger, Google Docs or Canvas? I'm honestly not sure. Unfortunately, with the higher math world, we actually go ahead and use, the university math world. Almost everything's based off a typing language called LaTeX. And we usually just use things that use that. So unfortunately, I'm not too sure which is better for Google Docs or Canvas. I'll show a few things that I could use with a few G Suite enabled apps, or a few things that I like using with G Suite. I could try to go into Google Meet later in this. I wasn't really planning for Google Meet. I was going to talk with Zoom. But if there's a very strong demand for it, we could try to set up a Google Meet and talk about a few things there. Okay. Any other questions kind of specific to Canvas, or are we okay if I talk a little bit about Zoom? Cool. See, I think I see one more. Okay. Oh, yeah, and Stephanie actually just posted a really, really lovely comment here, which I'll upvote, which is that Zoom's temporarily moving the 40-minute time limit on free basic accounts for primary and secondary schools. So I'll see if I can find more information on that and see if I could share that with Bob to pass along after this is all done, and kind of like a wrap-up email, which I'm feeling is going to be even more necessity. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and show Zoom and how I would use Zoom for my classroom. So right here, this is the desktop version of Zoom. I would say, regardless of if you're on a Mac or a PC, you're going to want to download Zoom. One thing is that I'm currently using my San Francisco State University Zoom account. When you first log into Zoom, that's not what I meant to do. When you first log into Zoom, you're going to head and see a few different options. It'll say something along the lines of, and actually I could probably just do this really fast. So when you log in, you can either log in with your email, assuming you've created an account, sign in with a Google account, or sign in with what's called an SSO. Most of the time with me, unless my school is giving me something, I just sign in with my Google. I just link it all together as much as possible. I'm sure, unfortunately, that's less secure for information security. But and this is my personal opinion, is that I think that so many of these companies have already made rights to my information. They're mostly just stealing from each other at this point. You can go ahead and use a new Gmail or anything like that. But SF State already had a issued account. So I'm going to sign in with an SSO. So what that means is I'm going to type in my ed domain, which was sfsu.edu, and then it'll be zoom.us. And then you'll see that you'll get a tab that looks like this. Yours will be kind of analogous to this if your school already has paid Zooms. So a few schools are doing things like this. This is unfortunately more of a nicety for universities than K-12. But if your school does something like this, you'll want to log in through a page like this. It'll just automatically take you to your school's portal. I'll log in, and voila. So I could open in Zoom meetings, and it's really just kind of like a slight ed wraparound. Okay, so you have a few options when you set up a meeting. I'm going to avoid using new meeting. It really streamlines a lot of the process, but gives you a lot less control. And I'll talk about the features that I actually like when I'm going ahead and scheduling a meeting. So I'm going to schedule a meeting like I would a classroom meeting. So I'm going to say that, okay, class meeting 7-8, and let's say that this class starts at 1:30 p.m. Right? So I'll go ahead and see that I have my start day. I'll set it to 1:30 p.m. I'll say that it runs an hour. You could do this kind of stuff like recurring meetings if you wanted to make it regular. I'm just going to make this one-off. This is what I usually do. I'll talk about why in a little bit. But you could go ahead and use a meeting ID, either the same persistent one, so students could kind of log in with the same one, or generate automatically. I'm going to go ahead then, and this right here is just kind of a few basic features. If you want to kind of like automatically have your video pop on, this will kind of like just encourage everyone's coming on with their video. If you want your students to be more participating through video and you want to see their lovely smiling faces, you can go ahead and keep this on. If you just kind of want to keep that less of a thing, if you're worried about the students' bandwidth and you don't want to have some students able to take advantage of the webcam features and others can't, you could turn that off. And then you have kind of calendar options. This right here, I usually just personally link it to my Google Calendar. There are a few advanced options, which I'm not going to go into too much. I mostly just wanted to go ahead and schedule my meeting. So this is going to be slightly annoying on my end. It will, again, kind of like pop up and make the Google Calendar invite. So I'm going to kind of like, say that that's okay. I'm linking it to my email. This is just doing some kind of, terms and services stuff. And one thing that's really nice is that it goes ahead when you're doing this through a calendar invite. You're able to see a few things that matter the most to you. Honestly, most of this stuff right here doesn't really matter. This is kind of like from the heyday when Zoom was still doing a lot of call conferencing. I'll talk about what we care about from that. But the big thing you're always going to want is this URL, which you can kind of copy. This is the thing that I'm 100% putting into my classroom management. So if it's Google Classroom, is it Canvas, is it Schoology, I'm taking this, I'm putting it in the announcement saying, this is where class is meeting. And then if you have a password, well, you'll see that that password and meeting ID are included right here. So everything that I care about is this right here. I copy this, I paste that into my school's learning system. So I take this, put it in my Canvas announcement. If your students don't have a good quality educate or have a good quality internet connection, they can join through call audio. So this is where you would kind of like see which of these locations is the best for you, and you could kind of grab this and you could put this in if you want them to at least be able to hear the class. Now, this is kind of more of a personal opinion of how you feel about students who are able to at least hear the class as opposed to be able to see. There's some philosophy that that's a good thing and it's give them whatever they can. It could lead to a kind of within your class culture, essentially like students who are getting a second class educational experience. That's something that I personally would avoid. I would try to talk about other options that you could do instead, and I'll get into that. But these are the big things that we'd want to care about. Getting this information that I have highlighted blue, and then whichever phone number kind of like best suits if you want your students to be able to call in audio. One thing I will say that I like doing if you have students with unstable internet connection and they're able to, you're able to have them call in with their computer and their phone audio. So even if their call quality drops, they can constantly hear through their phone call. I'm actually going to let Bob jump in for a second. Yes. All right, Bob, you should be able to turn your audio on or your video on.
Apparently, there's a problem with some people still seeing your screen on Canvas rather than on the Google Mail. I don't know if there's a way to refresh it or something like that, but
if you're still seeing that, can you try to refresh your web browser? Oh, let me check. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. Two people are showing this. Maria and Donna. Yeah. Can you try refreshing and see if that fixes the issue? I'm going to try refreshing the issue too on my end. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. A few people seem to have the correct screen. Let's give this a second. Okay, working now. Perfect. Also, while I have everyone in chat, am I going too fast or anything like that? Is this seeming to be okay? Cool. So I think everyone's good then. Great. All right. So we have all of this now. This is the kind of stuff that I would go ahead and put into our Zoom call. So I'm going to go ahead. This is all scheduled. Now, when I look at my Zoom, I could see kind of like the class meetings. So if you're looking at this page, I'm going to expand this a little bit. And I made a couple test ones right before. I will go into that one that we just had, class meeting starting at 1:30 p.m. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start this. Again, you could copy invitation, but I, oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I realized I should have said this. If you're having weird issues, I've noticed that Remo seems to have a hard time with Apple Safari. So if you're able to access a Chrome web browser, I'm so sorry. I should have said that at the start. I realized earlier today that this seems to work really well for Chrome and things that use Chrome as like a source, but it seems to have a harder time with Safari. Yeah, sorry about that, Ashley. Okay. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start this class meeting now. Great. Cool. And this is the bane of my existence. Whenever you join a Zoom call, make sure you join with computer audio. A lot of people, this doesn't happen. They've standardized this now. It used to be slightly less obtuse or slightly less in your face. And a lot of times people wouldn't click this. So make sure you join with computer audio. I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic. You can all still hear me in Remo, correct? One thing I've noticed is that a lot of computers don't like sharing microphone and computer permissions. It's just something that they really, really don't like, and sometimes they'll fight over it. But you'll see now, I can go ahead and make sure that my video's on. I actually have a bunch of different webcams. So for instance, if I want, I could use the one I'm using earlier, or I could go ahead and use this one, and you can kind of see, yeah. So I could kind of choose what I'm using. A thing that a lot of people run into when they're using Zoom for the first time is that they want to go ahead and make sure that they're using the right microphone and using the right speaker. So if you're ever having a lot of call problems, I would go ahead and make sure to use set whatever microphone you're using is the right one, and whichever speaker. I would really, really encourage, if you're going to be doing a lot of Zoom for your class, get a good pair of headphones and make sure that you just use headphones when you're on the call. For instance, that avoids a lot of the feedback loops. You'll see if you have all of your students popping to the call and they're not muted, if they don't have headsets, if they don't have headphones, you're going to start hearing them echo and echo and echo, and it gets worse. So make sure that you select the audio options you want. If you're going to be using Zoom, again, please, please, please get a headphone. Please, please, please encourage your students get a pair of headphones. I know adding more conditions on your students never feels great, but as far as making the experience more feasible for them, that's something you're really going to want. Now, to kind of invite them, you could either use the link that you had before. If you need to find that in your call, it's just by going into participants. So you can go here, you can see participants, and then there's going to be a button that says invite. So I could go ahead and then copy the invite link, which is that thing that we copied earlier. You could share that with people that way. You could go ahead and invite them if your school has like a systematic email system. This, for instance, is letting me email pretty much anyone on the SFSU EDU network. But we can go ahead and use this. And then let's see. As far as chat, they can have like a kind of like dedicated chat. This is kind of like the setup that I like the most, where it kind of like stays all in like the Zoom window. And this seems to be how they're updating it. If you have any random issues with Zoom, just try updating it. They release updates, it seems like almost every week. This setup I like a lot. So again, I have my feed right here. I have participants. You have basic options, like they could answer yes, they could answer no, they could use these kind of prompts. I've seen some students like to use these, but it's something that unless you tone set and you really reinforce, you'll usually fall to the wayside. Chat is a big thing. Make sure when you're using chat, you know who you're messaging. Zoom does a thing where you can either message everyone in the chat, or you can message one person at a time as a private chat. And if you get a private message, they'll automatically assume you want to respond to that message. So what happens a lot is that I'll be on a call with one of my colleagues, with a whole like group call, and one of my colleagues, let's say Brianna, messages me, and then I'm trying to say something to the entire chat. But if Brianna messaged me, my message will go just to Brianna and not to everyone. That happens all the time in Zoom calls. So I would just make sure that if you want something to go to all of your students, make sure that it always says to everyone. And then to pull that option up, all of your all of your things are in this little bar right here. So I can go ahead and have chat. I can go ahead and have participants. They're like little command shortcuts if you want to take time to kind of like learn this. Or for instance, chat's Alt-H. So if I press the Alt-H button on my end, I can make chat come up and disappear like this, no problem. Now, let's talk a little bit about actually going into your lecture. You can do a lot of different things for this. What I'm going to say, yes. Actually, that is a huge, huge thing. I would really encourage what Beth suggested, which is disabling private chat. I really don't like letting the students have any kind of opportunity to have any private messages like that to each other, because there is the possibility of bullying. I understand, wanting to let them have kind of like more freedom within the classroom, but any kind of like one-on-one setting you wouldn't want to have happen, in an in-person setting with your students, you don't want to have happen digitally, especially since, unfortunately, people being here digitally, being very cooped up, very frustrated with the way that the world is right now, could lead to a lot more cyberbullying. So you can go ahead and in your settings, disable private chat. You could also go ahead and do other options as far as changing, whether or not they're allowed to share screens, things like that. I'm going to apologize because Zoom actually updated right before I did this, and I forgot to look and see where to find these settings. So I think I'm going to try to find where those options are. And I think if there's going to be a recap email after this, I'll include a screenshot of that. I know that you can go ahead and disable things like screen share, and you can go ahead and disable things like private chat. So I'll see if I can find those. Okay. What I'm going to focus on now is actually what I would say for lecturing and how you like your best preferred system for this. So I'm going to go ahead and do screen share. And I just generically I don't use Apple devices. I use Windows, but I like the whiteboard feature a lot. It works well across a lot of these different devices. If you have an iPhone or an iPad, they have a specific applet that you could use there, and I'm going to pull that up. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the whiteboard option on mine. And now you see that I have this whiteboard right here. I can go ahead and I can write using my mouse, which is not nice. But since I'm using Surface, which is a device that I really love, I can actually go ahead and write directly onto it. So I can go ahead and write onto this. My handwriting is actually very horrible. So please don't use this as a point of reference for the quality of this. My handwriting is actually just that bad. But you can go ahead and you can do any kind of writing here. I didn't want to spend too much time talking about specific note-taking programs because there's a million out there and it comes down to a lot of personal preference. I'm a big fan of, for instance, OneNote. Again, that's kind of like on the Windows side. I'm imagining 99% of you are on the Apple side of things. I would just kind of play around with which one you like the most. If you're going to use the whiteboard in Zoom, you can do that just fine. You could also go ahead and just use a screen share of the application you like. So if I like OneNote, I'm going to do everything in OneNote, and then I'm going to share that applet. Okay. Now, if you don't have a tablet, pen, things like that, what can you do? So here's something that I like doing. So I'm going to show this on my feed. So this, if you're looking at my big face on the left-hand side, or if you're looking at the Zoom call, you see me in the top right. This is just like a phone arm that I bought for $7 off Amazon. I also bought one at a local Fry's, and they also have them at Best Buy. Again, you could get these things for about $10. And again, it's just a phone mount. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back on my desk. Now, I'm going to take just a second. I need to grab a link to this, and I'll show you a setup that I actually really like for classrooms that's fairly inexpensive. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share right here. I'm going to grab that link. And I need to just message this to myself for a second. So I can go ahead and use this. So I'm going to do that in 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So I just need to send myself a link really fast. So what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling up my phone, and I'm going to go ahead and use that link. Now, using the same Zoom call, I'm going ahead and joining, using that same Zoom link. I apologize. I need to invite myself so we actually see, sorry, I have too many windows open. I apologize. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So you see right here, I need to make sure that I let myself in. This is a big thing if your settings are like this. So I need to make sure that I admit myself. And then I'm letting myself into the classroom. So now on my phone, I'm now on the Zoom call. So you see that there's another me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch my video for 1 second. So let's see. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to go up here. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Okay, and then let's see. How do I? Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to switch my call slightly for a second. And let's see. Yeah, so if you look on my Zoom call now, I am now sharing my phone's video feed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to pin this video. So now everybody on the call sees this video, and they actually see what I have right here. And this is me using a fairly new phone, but I've seen people use this with relatively old iPhones. And the picture quality is actually really good, I would say, for even a few older phones. So if you have a phone with a webcam, I would really suggest getting an arm like this, and I can go ahead and just do my classroom like this. So I'm going to go ahead and move this slightly out of the way, and I can just, yeah. So I can write my notes, which again, I apologize for my handwriting, but you can go ahead and use something like this if you don't have a whiteboard applet on your phone. I think you could try to figure out a few different setups. I've known a few people who have a few more means. They're actually trying to use something like this for pointing to a whiteboard. If you have a document camera, yes, grab that document camera, hook it up to your computer. But I've just known a lot of people who personally don't have document cameras. This is my essentially $10 replacement for a dot cam. If you have a dot cam, I just like that a lot more than almost anything else. Okay, so this is kind of the setup that I would actually use for my actual classroom setup. So either using a dot cam or this kind of like phone jerry-rigged monstrosity that I'm using, or using kind of like the native screenwriting that you could use on your computer. Any of those would work. A few big things that I would suggest as far as your calls is you're going to want to make sure that you are able to, as far as taking Canvas, yes. So let me say for taking roll. Yes. So you're able to see on your participants who all is there. So what I would probably do, unless somebody has a better idea, is I would go ahead and I would actually just take a screenshot of the roll. So I'm using Windows. So what I would do is I would just use something called snip. So I just type in snip. I'll talk about what I would do in not Windows in a second. By that, I mean Mac. But I can go ahead and I could just grab the participants, and I would just use this as a roll sheet, and I'd use it that way. If you're using Mac, I believe the equivalent program, I forgot what it's called, but I remember the command. It's like Apple Command Alt 4, or it's Apple Alt 4, I believe. I would need to see what it is, but there's a screen cap software there, and I would just actually grab whatever your participants are, grab it, throw it that way. Yeah, or a screenshot is pretty easy. That's what I would use. There's a few things you could do as well, though. What I would personally suggest, if you're comfortable with this, I know a lot of people aren't. So yes, Command Shift 4. Yeah, yes. So what I would really suggest for all of these is if you're wanting to just have like the easiest time for your students, go ahead and you could actually hit the record button on your Zoom call. Or like Nancy's saying, having kind of like either an assignment or a ticket or something like that. I mentioned when I was in Canvas, I had them like kind of like upload a file as far as saying that they were in class. So in the call, what I would do is I would go ahead and I would kind of like say, this is what our question of the day is. I want you to then upload this to Canvas as a homework assignment for today's class. How do you do a screenshot? Again, you could either type in, if you're Windows, type in snip for a snipping tool, or on your computer. You actually see right here on mine, I have a button called print screen. It's usually somewhere a little bit above your keyboard. So like this, print screen. If it's on Windows, or not Windows, if it's on Mac, somebody in chat typed it, and it was Command Shift 4. And you could use that, and you could grab whatever you want. Okay, cool. Let's see. So far, is this looking good? Oh, I'm sorry. A few things to remind, though, is that you want to make sure that students are muted as much as possible. I know that doesn't sound nice. Nobody likes muting their students, but it gets very echoey, chambery if you haven't done a lot of these calls before. You could do that in Zoom really easily by just going ahead and clicking this mute all command. So you see right here, I can go ahead. I'm sorry, everybody, but we need to be quiet. Or if you hear like some echo or some background noise, be like, hey, everyone, somebody's got an echo right now. I'm just going to do a mute all just to make sure it goes away. Just be friendly with the tone setting, explanation that, hey, we just need to make sure everyone can hear me. So I would do that. And again, please, 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 cheap headphones. They're like, you could buy them for nothing at Walgreens now. You could buy them for like, I think less than $5 almost. Just really, really encourage your students can grab a couple. It makes call quality infinitely nicer. Okay. Let's see. So I've been talking for about an hour. I'm going to check a couple Q&A questions. I wanted to get to a couple like fun resources that we have on the American Institute of Mathematics. So I'll talk about that, I think, a little briefly. But I think after I get through the Q&A questions and talking about that, I'm then going to let people raise their hand if they want to ask questions, and we could just spend the next however long talking. Does that sound good? Let's see. Yeah, okay. Cool, so let me see if there's anything that I'm missing. Talk about how to get access to Canvas. Okay, can we talk about, okay, we're going to try to come back to that. Okay, so I think actually then these are all the same questions. Cool. Okay, then great. So I wanted to share a couple resources as far as problems. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up, sorry, I completely forgot what I was doing. I apologize. I had one last thing that I wanted to say as far as Zoom. I like using the dedicated meeting because I'm going to end my Zoom call now. I'm going to end my Zoom call, which I'm going to do like this, end meeting for all. And then when I look at my meetings, they're going to all be kind of like saved like this. So I could actually go ahead and actually record my meetings though, and I could find them all right here. So if you're going ahead and recording your Zoom call, you can grab the files like this. I would suggest that if you're comfortable with it, record your calls. This way, if students miss, if there's any kind of lag issues, things like that, you can go ahead, grab that file, and then you can upload that and put that onto your Canvas, onto your G Suite, onto your Google Classroom. So this is just something that I personally like doing. And if you're doing this, it's really easy. If you've saved it as a dedicated meeting, you can go ahead. There'll be, if you've actually recorded it, there'll be a button right here that says like where the recording is, and it'll find it on your computer. It saves it to some random file, which is like in your docs folder. It has a Zoom subfolder. It's a really big nightmare to find, but then you should be able to find something, just a button right here that'll find it for you, assuming you recorded your call. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to take a second to, somebody posted a new question. What about breakout meetings in Zoom? I don't like breakout meetings in Zoom. That's actually why I'm using Remo. I'm playing around with Remo because they do breakout meetings as well. If we were even so curious, I could show you what breakout meetings look like here in Remo. Breakout meetings, you can assign students 2 tables to work together, and then you could jump between all those tables. Students aren't able to move between the tables themselves, though, so you have to assign them. Once they're in there, you can make announcements to students, but unless this is something that they just patched out, it's a very, very tiny announcement that I've seen be ignored more often than not. And again, like somebody in chat alluded to, one-on-one settings are a little less, at least in my limited sample size, are sometimes less friendly than they would be in person. Breakout sessions cannot be recorded though. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so that's also a kind of like a problem there. Is like there's also only one of you. It's not recording. Again, if you're trying to like bounce between them all, it's a bit harder. So I personally don't like the Zoom breakout rooms just because it's a bit harder to kind of like communicate with everyone, and it feels a little isolating. But if that's something that you want to go with, that's still an option that you could find on the bottom bar. You create the breakout rooms, you tell students where to go, you could then end the breakout rooms as such. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to show off one thing really fast. All right, so this is the bit that I work with the American Institute of Mathematics. I help out with our K-12 programs, and we have a collection of these programs, which we're now referring to as math communities. This includes the AIMC, but it also includes a few other resources. We've got Global Math Project. We've got kind of like something that gets students playing games called Math Mondays. And then the big ones that I'm most associated with are the Math Teacher Circle Network and the National Association of Math Circles. I'm going to show kind of a little bit off from these, as well as the Julia Robinson Math Festival, as far as possible places to get resources for materials. So I'm going to go open this link right here. And if you go right here, right off the bat, hit activity plans and videos, I'm going to go ahead and pull up an activity, like, for instance, magic squares. And this is a math puzzle that has a lot of implications for high school or college level mathematics. But it starts off really, really accessible. It's a game that I've played with, as young as second graders. I think the sweet spot's like somewhere in like, the 4th to 8th range. But it's pretty easy to get into activity. We have kind of like a full video. So if you actually click on here, there's a YouTube video, which kind of like talks about the rules. If this actually loads, which, yeah, kind of like demonstrates the actual activity and how to play it, things like that. We have a couple of these right now. So far, I've got like kind of like 6 of these videos. And the idea being with this is that it's something that they could play asynchronously, so something that they could play remotely. So here we have kind of like, a video to get them started. If you're a big fan of Google, I also have something like this, which is Google Slides. So I've spent a lot of time playing around with making activities in Google Slides. The idea being that you click on any of this, I can't actually edit anything on this page except playing cards. So essentially, virtual manipulatives where you can go ahead and play the activity. Even they don't need playing cards, they don't need anything on their own. They just need what's on the virtual slides. And I think we have about half a dozen of these now. We're trying to make these, and it's something that you could just copy and paste into your Google Classroom or your G Suite, or if you're so inclined, or you can make it a link to paste in your Canvas. It's something really easy for students just to grab and play with. So if you're looking for something just to kind of like fill out your week, keep them like, mathematically engaged, we've got things like this on the Math Circle side. But then similarly, if we look over at the Math Teacher Circle Network, you can go ahead and see under resources, we have something called sessions. Yes, so they can work offline. I have a PowerPoint version as well. So you can technically use Google Drive offline. It gets a little wonky, but I also have PowerPoints that you could download. So you download it, opens up in PowerPoint. And again, it works the same way. I forgot that I haven't activated my PowerPoint on this computer yet, so we're going to forget about that. But they also have these kind of videos that talk about just using at-home materials. So I have this kind of fancy Google Drive slide stuff, which you could use either online through Google Drive, offline through PowerPoint, or through physical manipulatives. And we have kind of like, other versions of that as well. So, here's kind of like, another activity. Oh, oops, I clicked the wrong thing. I need to fix that link. Yeah, so same thing. It kind of like demonstrates how they can actually play with this themselves, or if they wanted to use the kind of Google Drive setup. In addition to that, you can go ahead and take a look at the Math Teacher Circle Network, which I also have on this page right here. And they have a ton of lesson plans. So you see here, these are, I think, somewhere on the magnitude of about 70 math lesson plans. If you're having a hard time seeing the feed, I would suggest try refreshing your web browser. If it's disappeared, I would say refresh your web browser. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to mention these, and then I'm also going to show, similarly, the Julia Robinson Math Festival has like 50 to 100 random activities. A lot of these are things that your students could play at home. But I just wanted to kind of like get these out here. And I think now, if everyone's okay, I wanted to try to pivot towards the question and answers and see if we could kind of like get through as many of your questions as possible, especially since I see that there is a lot of questions popping up. Okay, cool. So let's see. Let's do this if everyone's comfortable. If you have any new questions now, you can either go ahead and type them in chat, or you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then we could try to answer questions by calling on you when you kind of like ask everyone in attendance. For instance, I see our activities broke down by grade level or standard. Yes, to both. So let me see if I could pull this up on my end. Sorry, one second. I'm updating this right now. Let me see if I have one that's. Oh, I think I actually need to refresh the. I'm making this content, a lot of it live, unfortunately. But we have it sorted by best for grades. But we actually have someone at the American Institute of Mathematics who's going through and actually identifying all the standards based off grade level. I'm going to try to get those standards up by next Monday. We're going to have a week-long teachers workshop, so something like this, but an entire week. And I'm trying to get these up by next week. Okay. So yes, they're sorted by grade level or standard. If there are other questions, feel free to type them in chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and then I can call on you and you can just ask it for everyone. Let's see, I think I'm gonna also drop the screen share for now. Let's see. Are there any other big questions? Let's see, I know somebody's asking about Quicktime. Unfortunately, Quicktime I'm unfamiliar with. That seems to be a Mac-only program. I use something called OBS. OBS is a similar screen capture software. That's actually what I would use if I have to record or make any videos. So for instance, I've made a few videos where I'll put OBS as the screen recorder, and then it'll take recording of everything that I want. I can move things around. It's an entirely free software. Nasus. No, I am unfamiliar with Nasus. Let me just take a quick look. No, I'm unfamiliar with it. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's see. If you have a question, maybe if Donna, if you're comfortable answering this. Oh, yes. So I am going to talk about next week, and maybe I could just do that now. That's a good point, Bob. On math communities, we have this website right here. So I'm pasting a link in chat, and then I'm going to open it on my screen. So next week, the American Institute of Mathematics, in conjunction with the Math Teacher Circle Network, is going to be doing a full week-long workshop. What this is going to look like is that we're going to have sessions going from about 10 in the morning Mountain Standard Time all the way to about 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, with a bunch of these kind of like drop-in sessions. So we have kind of like a general tech check to start things off. I guess after we have a few people even doing things like online events like Zumba, yoga, just kind of like some fun kind of like things to do while people are stir crazy at home. But then we have involved math sessions. Like for instance, a member of the Math Teacher Circle Network named Joshua Zucker will be starting things off at about noon Mountain Standard Time, talking about compositions. After that, we'll have another discussion on online teaching, not led by myself, but led by two other members of the Math Teacher Circle Network, where they'll talk about their experiences, give more tips, do this as another Q&A, and then we'll have kind of like a fun game running through an hour after that, after going into another math session later in the day. And we have this running through the entire week. So essentially, we have a full days of content of a bunch of math seminars, fun games, things like that, running from Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, we're going to have something called Family Friday, where we're going to have a larger festival where we're going to show off a bunch of just fun math games that you could play online. It's open to all teachers, yes. So if you want, you can feel free to sign up using the link that I pasted in chat, which I will paste again. And yes, it is for the fantastic price of $3.99. At the American Institute of Mathematics, we are in the business of trying to do as much as we can without having any of you pay for it. We try very hard, but there's not a lot of money to go around right now. So this is a free workshop. We're still accepting signups. So we're going to have a bunch of people there. They're going to be talking about math. They're going to be doing a lot of this online stuff. It's going to be in this same kind of setup called Remo. You'll also be doing a lot more of the breakout room stuff. So I've actually been in presentation mode this whole time. We actually love Remo because it does different breakout room stuff, and we'll be playing around with like small group activities, things like that. Yes, if you could sign up in advance, that'd be fantastic. You see this green button right here. This is where you can go to register. It's not like any kind of binding thing. So we're imagining, like, we've had 200 people sign up so far. We're not expecting all 200 people are going to show up to every event they want. But you click this button right here. You could then go ahead and say that, yeah, I want to go to compositions. Yeah, I want to go see a screening of the There's a 1-hour film on the Navajo Math Circles, which I think a lot of you obviously have already seen, but we're going to be doing a screening of that and doing a Q&A with the director, I believe, and you can kind of check that out. Like David's saying, though, some of these sessions do require pre-advanced registration. For instance, all of our early morning workout stuff, all the Zumba, yoga, the people who are doing that really want to know the registration in advance, so you need to register there. We have a few things, like we have somebody doing origami. They want you to register in advance, so they make sure you have all the materials. And then the math festival I'm running, which will be doing a bunch of games and stuff like that. I would love if people could register in advance because I need to know how many people plan for. Are they going to have video available for these sessions? Yes, we're recording video. So just like today's call, I'm recording video right now. Next week, we'll be recording video. And let me show you kind of what that looks like. We're going to be sharing this. Hopefully, we can share this on the Alliance of Indigenous Math Circles pages, but I haven't talked too much with Bob and David about that. What this will probably look like at minimum is, sorry, let me see if I can find it. So what this will probably look like, we were actually doing a series of talks earlier in the year, and we went ahead and we would upload them to our YouTube and then go ahead and put them on our webpage. So again, at minimum, this will be available on a American Institute of Math YouTube channel. It'll be on this kind of math community's website. And assuming I can coordinate this with everyone involved, hopefully we can get this on the AIMC page too. Yes, cool. Let's see, other questions? Yeah, perfect. Yes, so David's confirming that it'll be linked on the AIMC page. I assume so much, but I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus without confirmation. Great. Let's see. Yeah, so if there are no other questions, any other things people want me talking about? I feel like I went through a lot of stuff very quickly. I hope that a lot of this was helpful to you all. I know just how hard and scary that this fall and life in the world must be, and especially for, you know, a lot of the groups of students you're working with in particular, like it's going to be really hard, and people seem to have like unrealistic expectations of how perfect we want all the teachers to be. So we really just want to do everything we can to make you all feel supported. Let's see. Have I ever used Google Sites? I haven't used Google Sites in years, unfortunately. I used Google Sites back when it was more of an entirely different service. I've used WordPress and I've used Squarespace. WordPress I use for websites that I make now. Squarespace I used to use, and I would say that if you're trying to make a website for any kind of like easy kind of use, I love Squarespace. I love Squarespace, but it costs money. I don't know how Google Sites compares. Could you run a mock-up math session right now if time permits? Yes, hypothetically, if that's something we're interested in. Yeah, I could try to do something like that. Yeah, so let me see if there are any other questions. Otherwise, I could try to do a mock-up math session right now. Yeah. Let's see. So any dying questions before we do a big year change? Again, sorry, I'm not familiar with Google Sites, unfortunately, but I will take the opportunity to plug, like, if you do have any kind of means, Squarespace seems to be like the easiest thing to make a website for. If you have, like, you know, the ability to pay for the X number of dollars you need. It also handles the domain stuff too, which is nice. Cool. Yeah, so I think let's do that. Let's actually do a mock-up math session if everyone's okay with that. Let's see. So let's actually do that. I'm going to grab a link really fast. Let's go ahead and do wolves and sheep. Okay, so I'm sharing a page right now. This is an activity made by Josh Sucker. I think I name dropped him before. He's maybe done some work with a lot of different AIM programs, and I'm not sure if he's done anything with the AIMC. But let's go ahead, and you can actually open up this page, which I'm going to open up myself right here on my share screen. Now, if you take the time, you could go ahead and you can kind of like watch this YouTube video. I don't know if I want to be so hokey as to make everybody like get off the call and watch one. I'm going to just show how I would do this activity using Google Drive. If you're curious, though, I made this video right here. Feel free to watch it, maybe even give it a like. One of these days, I might actually try to make a full YouTube channel. But I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Google Drive. So again, a few funny things are happening when you open this in Google Drive. It's going to ask you to make a copy. I believe it's asking everyone to make a copy. I hope it's asking everyone to make a copy. Let me make sure that that link's right. Yeah, so it should be asking you to make a copy if you click this. Can someone confirm that? Because I think that that button didn't do exactly what I was imagining it would. Can someone else try opening this button and see if it asks you to make a copy? I'm worried that my button might actually not go the place I wanted it to. Let's see. So this should not be editable. I see that someone else is viewing this. That's fine. So I think I'll worry about that later. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and talk about what the session in this problem looks like. So hopefully everyone's able to see what this looks like. Yeah, where it says copy link. So it should say something about asking you to make a copy. I think I'm going to talk about the activity really fast and then see if I can figure out the tech issue that I'm running into earlier. Okay, so how this works is that we have a 4x4 pin. Oh, it says view only. Yes. Okay, so I need to fix that. Okay, so that button's wrong. Right now it says view only. That's because I don't want you to be able to edit the master file. So you're going to have to go ahead and hit make copy entire presentation. Before I made it for all the newer activities that it just makes the copy for you. I was able to figure out how to do that with a button. This one's not doing what I was supposed to do. So you see where I say make a copy entire presentation. You want to do that. Okay. So I could try to fix that in a second. But for instance, with this activity right here, this is a variant on a chess problem. The idea being that we have kind of a 4x4 chessboard. We have two wolves that we can kind of place anywhere on our board. So you can see I'm doing this kind of like right here. And then we have a couple sheep. It will not allow you to make a copy. Okay, so then this one's bugged. I apologize for that. So then I'm not going to worry about this then. Okay, thank you. I've been meaning to actually go through and edit this like crazy, but I'm planning this workshop next week, so it's a bit of a nightmare. So let's actually focus on magic squares instead then, because I know that this link works. So I apologize for that. So the download button does work. Okay, that's good. So actually, well, let's focus on magic squares instead, because I think if I click this, yeah, this one says make a copy, which is what we want. Right. So this way, everyone should be able to play with manipulatives. Okay, cool. So you hit that make a copy. Again, you can't edit anything. You can watch the video if you want, but you can go ahead and drag these playing cards. This is a pretty well-known math problem. The idea being that we have our 3x3 board here. And we want to go ahead and take our numbers 1 through 9, and we want to arrange them so every one of our rows and every one of our columns, like this, and then our two diagonals all add up to the same amount. So for instance, if I can go ahead, I could grab a couple cards, like I'll grab something like this. Let's say 6, 4, 3. I add them up really fast. I see that this comes up to 13. My question then is, can I get all 3 of my rows, all 3 of my columns, my 2 diagonals to all add up to that same number 13? Is it possible? So can I get them to add up to this number? Are there certain numbers that I can get everything to add up to? Like, for instance, is there like one particular number that I'm able to get my rows, columns, and diagonals to add up to? And if we can do that, we're going to call that our magic number. So the idea being, you want to go ahead, make a copy of this, see if you can kind of drag all of these cards around and find some number that you can make everything balance out to. So again, if I'm trying to make this 13, well, I could do something like, well, 5 plus 7 gets me up to 12. One more makes 13. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Cool. And then I want to see if I can do this for all 3 of my rows. I think what I'm going to do, just in the interest of kind of like showing off a little bit more features, I'm going to stop this presentation mode, and then I'm going to jump people to tables where you're actually going to be able to talk and see each other. So I'm going to end presentation mode. You're going to be at a screen with a bunch of tables. Click and make sure that you're at a table with a bunch of people. When you're at a table, On your bottom bar, you're going to want to click on camera on and mic on. If you don't see anything, that means that you're probably at a table with nobody there or nobody's turned on their camera or mic. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this now, and we're going to kind of all be able to go to tables where you're going to be free to talk to people if you're so inclined.